the greenhouse.
Oh, isn't that great?
Yeah.
I picked up, you can see so many today.
Oh, beautiful.
Is that you? Is that your alarm or what is it?
Notification.
It's good.
I think so. I'm gonna go here, like, move now.
Okay, Ma. Oh, I need a we need an iPhone to record. Talk.
So my friend wants to see. What, do you know what that, Swamiji? I have a friend right now that wants to tune in. Where is it being broadcast?
Kālī Mandir, Ramakrishna. I need for the podcast. Didn't think you'd be gone. Oh, sorry. Demo. Thank you. Yeah. This on? Yeah, this on. Thank you. Jai Ma, Jai Ma. Om Mangalam Gurudevaya Devyamatrikya Mangalam Mangalam Bhakta Brindevyo Sarvalokaya Mangalam Om Stapakaya Chadharmasya Sarvadharma Sarupine Avatara Varishtaya Ramakrishnaya Mangalam Om Sarashiva Samarambam Shankarachara Majmam Ashmarachara Prayantam Vande Gurum Paramparam Om Guru Brahma Guru Vishnu Guru Deva Maheshwara Gurureva Param Brahman Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Ganesha Shara Gurubhyo Namaha Hari Om Tat Sat. Jai Ma. So last week we didn't meet, right? That was Puja. And the week before that, Swami Sarva Devananda. Okay, so we're back to our bad habits again of going weeks without. So I'm glad we get to continue. And actually, in a few days, we'll have a short break. Swami Chaitananda is here for only 1 month, I think, this summer, right? The July satsangs, I think he'll be giving. So where were we? What did we? We're reading from and discussing the Kālī Sahasranāma, the 1,000 names of the Divine Mother Kālī. And let's see where we are. We were in the names last week. Mata, Pramata, Pramada. Remember those? The mad, drunk or mad, crazy, like this, right? And Mahamata, yes. Actually, I think one of the things we talked about, we mentioned Ramprasad, the classic, or Ramprasad, thinking about the nature of Kālī. He said, "My mind goes mad." The same type of mind, Pagu. Our friend Dr. Lane Little, who's maybe you know him. He's a wonderful Indologist. I guess you'd be considered an Indologist. And he gave a wonderful class at UC Berkeley. Like we were invited to speak. Swami Bhajanananda and myself one time spoke. It was on the crazy saints, or mad saints. I forgot. It was in my mind last time to mention it. We ran out of time. And it's funny because we came in dressed like this. At that time, we had dreadlocks on top of that. So we looked quite a motley crew. Some bright orange. We sat down in front of the class, and then he starts just like, they were once like you guys, students, nice, clean-cut students of UC Berkeley. Right? Look what happened to them. This could happen to you. So we were supposed to be examples of crazy, of crazy devotees. But we talked mostly about Sri Ramakrishna's, his, the type of divine madness that he'd go like this. It was very, very interesting. But anyway, so the next verse, I think we're on verse 20. We did verse 21. Those names, and now on verse 22 we're in name 154, so 154 out of 1,000, so we got a good meditation on this. I'll chant the verse as best I can. Gīta-priyā Vādya-ratā Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā Catur-bhujā daśa-bhujā Aṣṭā-daśa-bhujā tathā. This is verse name 154 through 159. So the first is Gīta-priyā. Gīta-priyā. So Gita, we all probably know that name. The word Gita means song, right? And Priya means dear, right? So you could say she loves music. She loves singing. Actually, Gita specifically means like a song or singing, not just music. Regular music we don't call Gita. Actually, the very next name mentions instrumental type music and tunes and things like this. But Gita here means like when we say Bhagavad Gita, is the song that Krishna sung, his song, right? It's not just music in the general sense. Gīta-priyā. And last time we also, every time we keep bringing this up, this kind of dual way of saying the name by saying, she loves music. She finds music dear, but it's also she is the beauty and charm and beauty and dearness of music. She to her music songs are dear and wonderful, but she is the love of music. You can say like she is she is love of music as well as she loves music. That's both making her an object as well as the ontological reality itself. Gīta-priyā. And in the Krishna, he meant in the Gita, in the song, in the Bhagavad Gita. Let's be more specific now. In Bhagavad Gita, Krishna mentions among the Vedas, I am Samaveda. Right, I'm the Sama. We know there's actually in the Gita usually 3 Vedas are meant. Atharva Veda is not specifically mentioned. It's like Atharva Veda was added or absorbed perhaps a little later as its own we had the 4 Veda idea, but usually it's Rig Veda, Sama Veda, and Atharva Veda. No, and Rig Veda, Yajur Veda, and Sama Veda. Thank you. And so of course by the name I'm giving you a loaded question. I already give you the answer. What's the significance? What's the main quality of Samaveda? Probably know Samaveda is very musical, right? It's the most musical of the Vedas. It's the most sung of the Vedas, right? It's actually you don't hear it sung very often. Whenever you do hear it sing, it's like, whoa, that's strange. It's a very ancient rhythms. The meters are very peculiar. I can't even give an example or two. The closest we get, if you listen to the Kashmiri chanting, like Swami Lakshmanji chanting, and the way that those mantras are chanted, they chant them. They're inspired. They're not chanting Vedic mantras, but the meter is very similar. Like I can't give an example, just like we would say, Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Deva Maheshwara, and like Guru Brahma, this type of, it's like it's exceedingly musical. right? It's very much sung. So by saying he's the musical Veda, out of the Vedas, he's the musical Veda. That's one way you could Krishna could be saying, right? Also, Gīta-priyā could mean she who loves the Gita, right? There's also a sub-meaning like that. That's not the obvious meaning, but by extension, because there's not just the Bhagavad Gita, there's Rama Gita, there's Shiva Gita, right? There's many, there's Devi Gita, right? These are meant to be, these are originally sung by the Lord, or sung by the divine revelations. And like we sing them. We don't just chant, we don't chant them the normal way. And this is another, I think, since last couple of weeks, I was thinking, the next name is easy. It's Gīta-priyā, she who loves songs. Of course, Ma loves songs. Everybody knows that, There's not much more beautiful and charming than music, and singing, dancing music, right? These are the, but there's something about, I was trying to remember, and I could find it. I know which book just now I remember what book it's in a very large book called Hindu Dharma by the Paramacharya of Kanchipuram. It's in there where he's mentioned in Vedic recitation, in classical Vedic recitation, there are 6 mistakes, right? I think that cannot be done during Vedic recitation. One of which is Gita. They should not be sung. This is, of course, not referring to Samaveda, which is by nature the most melodious. But in other words, that when you're chanting, the Vedas are chanted, right? Like, Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya Namaste Rudra Manyavana. You hear, sometimes we hear, and I also like, but I know it's considered a mistake. You hear, like, there's CDs of, like, the Gayatri Mantra sung, right? Om Bhurvuvasvaha. It's very catchy. Now I started it the whole night. I'm going to be with that. You hear it all through Rishi. And you go to a holy place in India that they're blaring out of every cassette shop or CD shop. Cassette shop. Wow, it's been a while. Cassette shop. Anyways, we're talking ancient Vedic times here, right? Or now we have a CD of the Mahamrityunjaya mantra sung to musical form. It's actually very beautiful, right? And one thing, at least we got the mantra going. It's kind of that repetitive and catches the mind, because the mind loves music, right? But by the Veda's own standard, those are mistakes, right? The Vedas aren't sung. They're not, what you can see the difference between chanted and something that's voiced differently when you sing it, And there's other, one of which is to chant it in a too soft, faltering voice. Another one is to rock the body when you're chanting, because when it's like you hear people chant, sometimes certain types of chanting where people move, there's sacred chanting where the movement is part of the rhythm. That's considered a mistake in Vedic chanting. Should be, should be still, because otherwise your movement will change the intonation. The intonations are very important, because in Vedic chanting, it's not just the meanings of the words. Right, you could, not just a translation or the literal meaning or the information conveyed in the Vedas, right? A lot of it is the sounds themselves and the meters, the intonations of it. So Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya is wrong. Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya, that's right, And you have a good teacher. I've seen the teachers that are kids, like they do it wrong, and they get, from a little thing, they get hit with a stick. Hey, wrong. Do again, right? That's how you get corrected. Because Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya, we bow to the Supreme Lord Rudra. Easy. The meaning is however how you say it. I just said Om Namo Bhagavate Rudraya. That's the first line of the Rudram, right? But it's not, because that's a mispronounced. The correct line of the first room is also the pronunciation, right? So if you sing it into a different tune, a different style, it will change, and therefore it's not, like I said, the words are there, the beauty there, the power, but something is missing to the thing. So by saying, the reason I brought this up was in my mind a couple of days ago, Gīta-priyā could also be, I may be extending, I have a reason to say this, I have a textual support that supports me in saying like that. But it could also be that this is not the Vedas, right? Because a lot of translations you see is she who loves chanting. Gita here could be music, could be singing, could be chanting, right? But not Vedic chanting. Not that she doesn't like Vedic chanting. There's also Veda-priyā, perhaps. I'm sure that name is there. She who loves the Vedas, like this, right? But here saying she who loves mantras that are not the Vedas. That could be a meaning, right? And if we pull the next few verses, I think support that. The next two names will support that type of interpretation. So she doesn't just like, maybe we can word it that way, she doesn't just like the Vedas, right? She also loves the Puranas and the Gita and music and bhajans and other types, or the tantras, right? And hymns and stotrams, right? Things that are sung, right? So I think that's it's not just you expect she who loves Vedic mantras, right? But this is not that, because Vedic mantras are not sung, right? So that's an interesting thing. So Gīta-priyā. So the next name is Vādya-ratā. I have to get the right long shorten. Vādya-ratā. Vādya is like Gita. It's also a type of music, but it's not sung music. This is instrumental music, right? So it's again, that's showing it's a different category. It's singing, dancing, these songs and instrumental music show. Like an orchestra plays Vādya, not Gita, right? It's playing this type of instrumental music, and also by extension, it doesn't just mean instrumental music. It means the rhythms and the melodies and the harmonies and of music, right? Those intricacies. So first one, Gīta-priyā, she who loves that, or who you can even say who's in love with music, even that has that subtle meaning, Gīta-priyā. But here's Vādya-ratā. Ratā here, something like Priya, it's more, it really gives extreme pleasure from it. It pleases her. It's almost better. Rather than that she finds music dear, she finds music extremely pleasing. Ratā. Right. Vādya-ratā. Vādya-ratā. So you have singing and you have music. We imagine we have to have dancing in there somewhere. So the next name has dancing, but it's a little peculiar, as Kālī names can be, right? We said there's Kālī imagery is what we called it. What our official theological term is Halloweeny, right? Has a little bit of that kind of, has ghosts and goblins and skulls and swords and like this, right? So this is like that. So it has the word nṛtya. Nṛtya is dancing. So we know dancing. Preta-nṛtya, the dancing of, what's a preta? We've had many names on preta 2 years ago when we started this hymn, right? Ghosts, spirits. So it means ghost, right? Like we have, like in Buddhism, we have the hungry ghost as a preta. Right, it means spirit, this type of stuff. But we've established when we dealt with the cluster names was Preta. The word Preta was in 8 or 9 different names. We spent a lot of time describing what's usually meant by use. Here, Preta means corpse, right? Although corpse is other shava for corpses, there's other names for corpses, but when she has Pretasana, she's sitting on a corpse, not on a spirit, right? So like that, it's used like that, right? So Preta-nṛtya, the dancing corpses. So we're going to get good. Right? We got music and instruments, singing and music, and dancing corpses. So let's get. So Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā. Right. So that's the actual name. Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā. And this nṛtya we get Nataraj. You get all these names that nre and these names are for different permutations of the term for dancing. Okay. Parāyaṇā. So Parāyaṇā, it's interesting because in these clusters, I believe, and this is generally believed with Sahasranamas, each name's done on its own. It's a long list of names, but they're clustered in a certain way. They're by theme usually, sometimes by sound of the words. Words are clustered because of the pra sound is be repeated 3-4 times, for instance, like that. But sometimes they're clustered so that you think of the name in a different way. Like Parāyaṇā has one meaning and Pārāyaṇā has a different meaning, right? But they're not unrelated. They come from the same root word. So like when we say like, oh, let me finish my Parāyaṇā, that means I have to chant, I'm chanting some hymn. I have to finish my chanting, right? So that's one term, Pārāyaṇā is a long A, P-R long A, P long A, Pārāyaṇā. So that means a complete recitation is Parāyaṇā, Chandi-parāyaṇā, Gīta-parāyaṇā, like this, right? but that's not this word. But it's in a list of about music and chanting and singing. So you can see there may be a way of connecting if you consider the sounds of and I think we're justified in this. That's been in every verse has something like that where we're allowed and to see different names, how they relate to each other. So Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā, so that's Parayana, and Parayana is a different meaning. So Parayana is basically the way of is like the focus of, like when you focus, like the aim of something, the object of something, right? The object of your attention when you're meditating, you're thinking about something, or focused on something, or going somewhere, or trying to accomplish something. That object, the thing you're focused on, that's Parayana, right? The final aim, the chief object, like that. These type of words like that. So then you have the word. How do you put that name together? Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā, right? So you have dancing corpses, right? Very good. She's the object of dancing corpses. She's the focus of dancing corpses. It's a very strange name, I think. No, it's a strange name. Whether I think it or not, it's definitely an interesting name. Preta-nṛtya. So, in our discussions of Preta, we went to why so much emphasis on corpses and disembodied spirits and the symbolism of Kālī. And one object, one name, one possibility, and I think it's not just a possibility, it's one of the reasons, is that Kālī, since ancient times, is associated with cremation grounds. She's associated with death, with time, with transition, with in-between stages, between life, between worlds, right? With ritual impurity, with the outskirts, with tribal traditions, forest traditions. You could say in one sense, a little anthropologically, she's an ancient forest goddess. Like we have to be careful what to say, but it can be said because it's historically not inaccurate to say such things like this. Although we have to be spiritually careful how we mean it, right? That she's an ancient tribal goddess, mountain goddess. One of her names is Vindhyavasini, the Vindhya mountain at that time. These were extreme tribal area, even now, right? These are jungle, you have to be careful with how we use our words. There are tribal civilizations, not what we consider modern civilizations, right? And so many texts say, oh, Kālī comes from the Vindhya mountains, right? It's like, well, but isn't she the supreme goddess? Oh, yeah, she's the supreme goddess, But we have to see how the one who is worshipped by tribal communities in the mountains, in the jungles, right, is also the supreme goddess. Is also the Mahadevi, is also Durga, Lakshmi, Saraswati, is identified and worshipped and universalized this way. So she is associated with death and cremation and this extreme other, right? And so by saying that she is the focus of dancing spirits, could be because she is the focus of dancing spirits. If you in the world of spirits, ghosts and goblins and like this, like this, she is their focus. She is connected to them, right? But yogis, we look at these texts, they must have some yogic interpretation, some philosophical, some theological, some sophisticated interpretation, right? I think that the older view is quite sophisticated. Actually, it's not our worldview because we don't have the background we don't have that. We didn't grow up in the jungle in a pre-society, but in tribal society consciousness. So, but a good argument is made that was the goddess tradition. They lived in the goddess. They lived the goddess of the forest. They lived in communion with raw nature. This may be a little bit overly romanticizing, but anyways, there's an argument for that. But trying to find a little bit more, once as the Kālī tradition and these cremation ground, death and dying and ghosts and goblins and corpses tradition became thought about by people in the yogic tradition, the Vedantic tradition, in the tantras, the philosophical aspects of the tantras. All right. They began new meanings or broader meanings were discovered or thought about. So Preta, by extension, means, because when you think of corpses and you think of ghosts, what does that mean? It means you're thinking of death. You think of death, everything dies, everything is destroyed, right? Remember, Ma has in her very strange iconography, her earrings are made of are corpses, right? What type of corpses? Embryo corpses. There we go. Let's go beyond dancing corpses to embryo corpses, right? It sounds like a heavy metal, death metal band title, Embryo Corpses. That's my favorite band when I was in high school. There isn't such a band, but because it's taking the corpses and embryo have to do with birth and death and the body, right? And when a corpse comes alive, that means even if you go back, like some people believe that this is the very source of religion when we're realizing something survives death. There's a problematic with this kind of interpretation, but this is one very common. Maybe a lot of people think, ancient religions, when people began to think that something survived the death of the body, that's the beginning of animism, and that we began to see a spirit behind material things. There's a whole development of ancient and turn of the century philosophy, Western philosophy on the source of religion. But when you say like a corpse comes alive, that's a good symbol of something surviving death. Right, so both destruction and something eternal. So it's given this type of super philosophical interpretation, where it may not mean that at all, but now it means, right? Dancing corpses means destruction, right? Temporariness of the body and eternality, that which is eternal. It's both living and not living, right? And so we can extend that even further. Preta, by meaning dead body, also means death, right? As a sign. What's the sign of death? A corpse, a dead body. You can't get a better. Nowadays we use like a skull, right? Like you put a skull. Danger is that you'll die. You put a picture of a skull, right? So a dancing corpse is a sign of the dance of death or the dance of destruction, right? Which is, you see, tathā sometimes seeing is like the dance of destruction, So Ma is definitely that her dance. Right, the focus of her dance is, okay, you can't get like, Ma is the goddess of destruction. You look on Wikipedia, one of her expert devotional epitaphs is goddess of destruction. Excellent, you can read now. We don't need 1,000 names. Wikipedia already told me everything I need to know about it. She's the Hindu goddess of death and destruction. Great, right. But what does that mean? It's like it's not destruction. It's destruction. Something's dancing destruction. It's not just destruction. It's birth and death. It's life. It's the effervescent, ever-changing nature of name and form, right? So, things come into being, comes out. That's her dance. She dances creation into existence. But as soon as something's created, its destruction is fixed. Right, there's a famous verse in Sankhya tradition. I'm forgetting. The Swami Bhajanananda quotes it. I'm forgetting it right now, but basically it says anything that comes together will come apart. Like a real simple definition. We don't have to get too emotional about it. Anything that's put together will come apart. That's it. This building, we put it together. Hopefully not soon, but it will fall apart. We'll keep fixing it, but eventually it's going to fall. Anything put together. That's true of not just of like this desk and this microphone and my book, which is already fallen. I'm like. Let's see. When I started these talks, this was a perfectly good conditioned book. It may have been to do with my behavior towards books but I think it has a lot to do with the intrinsic nature of things put together will fall apart. That's also true of our bodies, right? And it's true of the world itself, right? That is a dance of death. If it's a dance of the dance of time. Another way you could say it is the dance of time, of creation, destruction. Creation, sustenance, destruction. That's the dance of time. So this is given a very philosophical interpretation to a kind of ghastly scene. She is the focus of of dancing corpses or dancing ghosts, right? But in the tantras and in the Kālī tradition specifically, they give these corpses and death and dancing. All these things have deep meanings, right? Are understood in a deeper way. Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā. But also by saying it's parayana, it's the object of it. So either she's dancing, she's the corpse dance. It's not clear in the language whether she's a dancing corpse, right? Right. I mean, she's the material world, just coming into time as time, right? Everything coming into existence and fleeting instantly, and like this, right? Or she's the object of that. She's the focus of it. So we are all dancing corpses, right? So this is so. Are we not dancing? Are we not moving around corpses? This body, we've joked in the past that this body, like Shavasana, Shavasana is, of course, nowadays Shavasana is laying on your back and breathing deeply into your stomach and deeply relaxing, which is very nice, right? But Shavasana is the practice of tantrics. They find a dead body and sit on the dead body and chant their japa like this, right? That's something, I don't suggest it. It's not legal in many states at present. But we say that this body is our shava. This is a dead body, right? And this is what we sit on. We're all the time sitting on this dead body. And Shavasana, we've interpreted in previous names, is when Ma, through the rising of Kundalini, he's united with Shiva, top of the head. This is the Shavasana. Right, so our bodies themselves are corpses, right, and they're dancing. They're shakti. Something comes out. Something's making them live, right. But a corpse is not alive; it's already dead. But a living corpse, I mean, there's some spirit in it, right. That's a very good description of the body. The body is not living, right. There's a spirit that makes the body move, right. And you can see many of you maybe have had the actually, it's a great honor, but difficult honor, to be present when somebody leaves their body. From one moment to the next, what happens when something is so valuable, so much concern, so much care, and then afterward, you emotionally deal with the reaction, and then you arrange to have the body removed, right? What's the difference, right? When there was the one corpse was moving, and now the corpse is not moving. Once the corpse was dancing, now the corpse is not dancing, right? So this is so. Dancing corpses, if we keep extending the name, and the rings of interpretation of this name are the human body, or all bodies. We are constantly moving bodies, right? But she is the focus of the goal of dancing corpses. So she is the goal of the human birth. Ultimately, all of our goals, right, is the divine. Sri Ramakrishna said this many, many times, that the goal of human life is God realization, attainment of God. Ishwar Lobh. Ishwar Labh? No, the attainment. Ishwar Labh. To attain the attainment of God, right? She is, by this Parayana definition of she's object of attention, final aim, right? Final, and also one of the definitions is like the final religious, the goal of religion, a category of religion, a division, an order. When you in the religious world, if you start dividing things, also parayana, another use of the word, right? So in religious thinking, the highest, supreme, ultimate goal of all us dancing corpses is she's the goal, right? She's the one dancing through all of us. You can say it like that, and she's the goal of all of our dancing. As we, you can see, in the beginning, there's more life than there is corpse and childhood. You see, there's all energy and no and very little. But as we get older and older and older, I'm finding this right. This week has been tough, right? It's like the spirit trying to animate this corpse is not so easy. The back's hurting and things like this. You can feel like, oh, hold on. You can really feel it. Like, wow, this is not. You can see the dynamics of it, and then you think, okay, I'm not this body. I have a body. We think like this in spiritual life a lot, right? I'm something inside the body, something unchanging within the changing body, or something slowly changing and quickly changing, but we don't know how to interpret like this. But whatever it is, what's the purpose of it? She is the purpose, right? So Gīta-priyā, she who loves singing and songs. Vādya-ratā, she who is extremely pleased by music, instrumental and music. Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā, and she who is the ultimate aim of dancing corpses. Not bad. So now we're going to switch to a slightly different cluster of names. Right? Those are good, I thought. Interesting. Catur-bhujā, daśa-bhujā, Aṣṭā-daśa-bhujā, tathā. So Catur-bhujā here means, what does bhujā mean? Very good. So Catur-bhujā means she who has 4 arms. And then Daśa-bhujā, she who has 10 arms. Is it easy? And Aṣṭā-daśa-bhujā, she who has 8 plus 8, 10 arms, which means 18 arms, right? So these are obviously referring to different iconographic understandings or images of Ma. Catur-bhujā this is specifically about, the text is about Kālī specifically. And so the most images of Kālī that have become, at least the Dakshina Kālī that's become the most predominant form of Kālī being worshipped, is seen with 4 arms, right? So then but 10 arms and 4 arms and 10 arms and 18 arms and 1,000 arms. There's all, you can keep, so many images that have all these different type of things. So we have to think what this is. Something that sometimes people have a hard time, people outside Hinduism don't quite understand. I remember I got a little, in high school, how I got it, but I got a little Christian tract, for evangelicals handout, maybe at my college, probably was at my college. Colleges are big places to hand out evangelical tracts. And I remember this one was black, right? The whole thing was in black. And of course, all written in capital letters. It's true if it's in capital letters. That's the first sign of religious discourse, is capitalize the whole thing, right? But it had a lot of little cartoony things, and it had like a fictitious little meeting between, a Christian missionary going to India, in a village in India, and having a conversation about their God. Our gods, and the person was, and the person like going, well, how many heads does your God have, right? It's like in a way trying, and how many arms is your God? My God only has 2 arms, like a regular, trying to show that this is when you emphasize these type of things, was like it's obviously completely made up. There's no such thing as 4-armed people or 4-armed things or 10 or elephant-headed things. Like this is showing to show it's quite ridiculous, right? There was a book written in the turn of the century. Swami Bhajanananda had his father's antique shop. It was called This Believing World, right? And it was teaching. It was these romantic, full Orientalist type book meant for a popular audience at the turn of the century, right? And it described, I remember one of the lines, grotesque elephant-headed deities. Right, and I'm going, oh, that's Ganesh. He's like the most cute and the most adorable of all our grotesque-headed deities, right? But but if you think of you start thinking, oh, this is but the way I'm interpreting. So similarly with the 4, and so I was with one of our teenage kids that we have, our second generation teenage kids. When I was saying, when somebody challenges you, oh, your God is like, you should challenge back. What? How many God? Your God only has 1 head? Oh, that's a very weak God. Our God has so many heads, or so many arms. Only 2 arms? That's like that's a common thing. Ours has 1,000. So much more powerful. If you take it at that silly level, but actually it's not silly. There's a meaning to that, because arms mean something, right? And in the world of, now we're dealing with both a visual iconography and a spiritual meditative visualization revelation iconography. Like this, my notes here, there's just a bunch of little squiggly lines, right? Little letters typed out like that. And if somebody didn't know English, right, or didn't or know reading in general, right, would look at this, and if they some people would know, I can't read that, but it must have some meaning, right? That's a humble position. I don't know what the meaning is, but it must have some meaning. Other people, I see people reading, turning the pages. They must be getting something out of it and going, so beautiful, or I disagree with this, right? And arguing on the point, or have some meaning like that. But somebody look at this, you're pretending. It has no meaning. Look, it has no meaning. Look, just squiggly lines. If you don't know what the language is, it has no meaning. If you don't know what the language is and you're stupid, it has no meaning. Because actually, if you don't know what the language is, then there's many things. I'm very bad at Devanagari, right? It's like Atmaram in 1 month learned Devanagari more than I've done in all these years. It's not that hard. I don't have a limited brain space left. I learned it 3 times, But it's like, oh, I look at that. My textbook has the Devanagari and has the translation underneath it. Transliteration I can read. The Devanagari I'm not so fast at right now, right? But I know it's not, because I can't read it. I know it's like not meaningless. Somebody can read it, right? It's like you can read it, right? Most people, it's the same script as Hindi. More than 1 billion people can read it, right? It's not that hard. and I used to be able to read. I just forgot it already, out of lack of practice, So to say that it's meaningless is foolish, right? To say I don't understand it, that's humble and admits your ignorance. I think that's so. Similarly with iconography, with imaging, right? You have to. These things have meaning. They have a language. They're a reading. So one of our friends coined a term like, we have this term iconoclastic, right? This is traditions that tear down images, right? So one of our friends coined a term iconoblastic. He says Hinduism is iconoblastic. I'm going, it's like, what is that word? That's a strange word. It's a made-up word, right? But it means that it creates images. It creates icons. It's like where there doesn't need to be an image. Like, for instance, we don't need dancing ghosts to get the point about the nature of the body. But we got dancing ghosts in the previous line, right? So it creates. It's an extremely visual religion. I remember, in Berkeley, in my because I was a religious studies major at UC Berkeley, and UC Berkeley doesn't have a religious studies department. So I was a religious studies major. Now it's completely gone now, right? But at that time it had a department, but not really, right? So you took like anthropology religion from an anthropology class, and sociology religion from sociology. You did the same thing. There's no, I had 4 or 5 classes with an RS in front of it. Everything else is from another perspective. So in a certain sense, for most people, those classes were their introductory classes to religion, right? In most of those classes. So unfortunately, I took like 20 introductory classes to religion. That's what happened. And that's one of the drawbacks of that department. Although there's many benefits also, but because of that, all the Hinduism classes, my focus was Hinduism, so all the Hinduism classes always had a group of introductory students, never people who their specialty, except in the graduate level, you didn't know people specializing, right? And so there was a small book, very famous book by Diane Eck, right, called Darshan, right, Seeing the Divine in India, right? I was assigned that book, I think, 9 times at UC Berkeley, because because you cannot get so much of Indian philosophy and Indian practice without understanding the idea of Indian iconography, Hindu iconography, right? The nature of iconography, the anarchonic images of like shalograms and shivalingams and yantras and then the more anthropomorphic ones and so these things have meaning. So I would suggest the book if you haven't. I mean, not anybody here, but somebody wanting to understand a little bit. It's not a bad introductory book, but I didn't read it 9 times. I was assigned it 9 times. Once or twice is enough to get the point. So anyway, we have to think, what do many arms mean, many eyes mean, we've gone through this already, but because we're dealing with a name with different numbers of arms, we have to give it a general perspective and then fill it in perhaps. Could just be because God has 4 arms. It could just be that, It's like we don't give any philosophy to it. It's like Vishnu came and said, "I'm Vishnu," and he had 4 arms. It could just be that. But the thing is, and maybe it's just that. I have no doubt that that's probably just true. Vishnu happens to have 4 arms, but I have to try to clean him up a little bit to make him justifiable. Why Kālī looks like this? So we give it a philosophical, theological, expansive, universal interpretation, right? Could just be that Vishnu has 4 arms. Many years ago, I asked one devotee at the Hare Krishna temple. We asked him, "Why is Krishna blue?" Right, and he spoke for 2.5 hours, right, on all kinds of stuff. It was very amusing. At the end of which, he realized he had not answered why Krishna was blue, and he stopped. He says, "Krishna likes blue," and he got up and walked away. I'm going, that's probably the best answer. Krishna's blue because he likes blue. It's a pretty color, It's like we're trying to give it. We want something that satisfies a different part of us than Kālī has 4 arms because she has 4 arms, But we'll talk a little in a more general sense. What is a 4 arm, or multiple arms, or multiple heads, or multiple eyes? So, like in Western theology, things we attribute to God, like omnipresent, omniscient, omnipotent, right? These are a type of words with the omni words, right? The all pervading, or all powerful, or all knowing, right? So if you can write the idea God is all knowing. Right, that's a good. And we get the idea when it's what I mean. If we were to show it in a picture, right, not in a sentence, right, we could perhaps show like faces in all directions, right? He sees everywhere, like that, or all powerful. Hands are signs of power. We do stuff, our ability. But you could show multiple hands to show multiple power. That's one. This is a very simple first sweep at multiple arms, multiple heads, multiple eyes, like this, right? And then it's not just multiple hands and multiple arms. Usually those arms have things in them. They're either mudras, right, showing something, or holding something, usually weapons, right? Like Vishnu holds a club and a lotus and a conch and like this, right? In this classic depiction of Dakshina Kali, she holds a sword and a severed head. We've spent many hours in various talks on these on the symbolism, so we won't go too much into it. And she gives a Abhaya Mudra and Varada Mudra, the giving of boons and the giving of fearlessness, right? So that's so multiple arms, various powers. It could be that meaning. Multiple arms holding various things, right? Those things are themselves connected to the deity, like Kali is connected with swords and skulls, and Vishnu's with different things, and Shiva holds a Trishul, and Damaru like that. But those things are not just arbitrary. There's stories that describe how Vishnu got his conch and Shiva got his Trishul, right? There's a lila behind it. But once again, we can give it philosophical or symbolic meaning, right? So then the sword could become death and transformation. It could also become discrimination. The difference between real and the unreal, the value, this type of, it's interpreted this way. We use a sort of discrimination like that. A spear could be, of course, there's a story where Shima's fighting with a spear, right? But if you give an interpretation, that spear could mean, and yogis have interpreted, and some commentaries explicitly state it, so we're not making it up, could mean concentration, right? Where something is like, a spear is something that's straight and narrow and to a point. Right, you aim at one thing. An arrow is also something you aim at. So it has this type of concentration or focus, right? Danda, staff, right? Danda also means discipline and punishment, and governance, right? So it has that meaning, right? So like that, we can start attributing those type of meanings to what she's holding. These are the disc. Vishnu's disc, or Ma also holds this Sudarshan. So that's given many times the image of time, right? But also Sudarshan actually means auspicious vision. So we have to go deeper into what Sudarshan really means. There's a wonderful, what started me actually being even interested in the Kālī Sahasranāma is the cluster of names where about her chakras. Right, her connection to the chakra is very interesting. That's what started my interest in this text. So we'll get to, I don't want to say it and then not having to say when I get to my favorite verses. So I have to restrain myself. But so that's another thing. So they're also seeing the image can also be interpreted. These are cosmic powers. That's how she does things. But when we say she's all powerful, what are her powers? She has the power to create, the power to destroy, the power to sustain, the power to purify, the power to chastise. So all these are representative of the various powers, right? Another way of interpreting it. Another way, in the Chandi, for instance, we're encouraged to interpret these weapons as also aspects of sadhana, right? And it's not so much like, oh, Ma, you come, Ma Durga, like Durga-pujā, Ma, with your weapons, please kill the demons. I have a problem. You with your weapon come and fix it. Of course, she can do that, right? There's no doubt. But you do what happens, like in Ramayana, Lord Ram, in one of the versions of Ramayana, Lord Ram had to do Durga Puja, right, to fight Ravana. But he didn't do Durga Puja so that Durga would kill Ravana. He did Durga Puja that he would have the strength to kill Ravana. Right? In Mahabharata also, Krishna took Arjuna to do Kali, worship Bhadrakali. Right? Not that Kali would kill the Kauravas. Right? That he would have the strength to fight the Kauravas. Right? So her Shaktis are different powers that God has. Right? Are seen as aspects that we need. Right? That her actions within us is us acting. Right, with these aspects of these weapons of sadhana, different aspects of sadhana, perhaps another interpretation. In the Shakrari Stuti, the second hymn in the Chandi, Indra he prays with the gods. He speaks in the Devi's language. He's assuming what the Devi must be thinking. He says these demons, Ma says, deserve. They're so evil. They deserve long suffering in hell, right? But, she says, they put in her mouth, right? Let them attain liberation by dying by the weapons held in my divine hands, right? So that has been interpreted when we interpret it as a sadhana shastra, not just an ancient mythological revelation of the goddess, right? But as a sadhana shastra, that aspects of ourselves, we can, we have things in us, external and internal aspects that maybe they're so horrible but everything is to be purified, everything to be released, and they're released and transformed through sadhana, right? These are her aspects. So that we invoke her as aspects of sadhana. That's another interpretation. There's another connection is by having 4 arms or 10 arms or 16 arms or 1,000 arms, right? It sometimes connects her to other deities, right? So here it just says Catur-bhujā. Of course, Kali has 4 arms, right, in her most common form, right, that we worship at least, right? But there's other deities that have 4 arms. Like the most common deity to have 4 arms is Vishnu, right? So some commentary on Kālī Sahasranāma state that this is connecting her, showing that she's Vishnu, right, or she's connected to Vishnu. She's like Vishnu with 4 arms, like this, And so you can see sometimes to use that type of thing, like we have in the corner here, we have a deity, a rare deity called Sadbhuj Mahaprabhu, Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So the story goes, there's 3 recorded instances in Chaitanya Bhagavat, Chaitanya Charitamrita, but there may be more also, where he showed himself in a unique, or a revelation to somebody, or somebody had a revelation, rather he showed himself, or somebody had an aha moment, that and seeing him, both, he was a sannyasi at that time, so it's symbolic of the sannyasi is a water pot and a danda. These are the iconographical triggers to represent sannyasi, right? And that's Chaitanya sannyasi. But he also has a flute, 2 hands holding a flute and 2 hands holding a bow and arrow, right? Showing that he's Rama holding the bow and arrow, he's Krishna holding a flute, and he's Chaitanya, right? So here, having 6 arms is showing there's a meaning behind it. By saying Chaitanya has 6 arms, mean that he's Chaitanya, our Lord, the great master. He's also Krishna and he's also Rama. So, like when Sri Ramakrishna, he who is Rama, he who came as Krishna has come again as Ramakrishna, right? He didn't reveal such a form, right? But he made such a statement. If we were to show that, maybe he did reveal. I mean, Chaitanya, we believe, revealed that. But even if he didn't, if we believe that, or if he told us that, how would you show that? You could show it exactly like this, right? Show. Now all of a sudden, a 2-armed person has 6 arms, or when in the Gita, Krishna shows his universal form and freaks out Arjuna, right? I did it too. And then he prays, "Let me see your original form." Then he becomes a 4-armed form, and then he takes on a 2-armed form. Right? The 4-armed form is important. It's not just I'm the cosmic death and time and creation and everything's being swallowed by me and there's this big, almost frightening, overwhelming cosmic vision. Right? He's also Vishnu. Right? And he's also Krishna, his friend, charioteer, right? And teacher. Right? But the 4-armed form is an important thing to see because by showing that, he showed he's Vishnu. He's not normal. Right? That even the 4 arms means a divine being. Right? I mean, Chaitanya, the joke said if we had 4 arms, we'd have a hard time sleeping. you know. Thank God we don't have four arms, It's like our original forearm form, maybe, So she has four arms. So another point about the multiple arms and the four arms. Ma, here she has four arms. See? Four arms. Now you see. Four arms. Beautiful. Right? But she also has 10 arms. And she also has 16 arms. And another place she'll say she has 1,000 arms. Or thousands of arms, maybe. Infinite amount. Ananta, something like that. Right? So obviously, these aren't all her arms. Right? So either she's showing, or we're seeing, or interpreting this particular rupa, or it's not the full thing. So by the six, actually, it says 16. 16 is a classic number for a description, and from her top arm to her lower arm, she doesn't just have four arms. She has 8 arms on this side, and 8 arms on this side. We're seeing the top and bottom, and the top and bottom. The two extremes. Just like we see two extremes on the left and right in the Kālī imagery, right? We have blessings and wounds, and then swords and severed heads, right? This is the two. So the types of symbols are going to be a little more on the transformative, corrective, harsher aspects of life, and then the more blessings, nurturing, the dakshina side parts of life, right? So it's the full. She has unlimited, actually. In Tantra we use colors. She has unlimited colors, right? Rays or aspects or digits, Just like the moon, we think, we easily think of full moon and new moon, but we know there's 15, 16 digits of the moon and 15, 16 digits on the other side of the moon, from dark to light to dark, right? Right. But we usually think, dark, light and dark, right? These are two, and maybe in between somewhere, right? But actually each one of those has 1,000 arms and digits in between. Each one can be shown. And so when we saying two extremes, we've talked about this also. Kālī, in her images of dualistic images, how the one becomes the many through duality, through birth and death, through pleasure and pain, through health and happiness, these two extremes, the left and right side. But actually it's not the world of duality. We always say, we've mentioned before, the world of duality is our language. It's the world of multiplicity, duality between good and bad, night and day, birth and death. These aren't the only two things. It's not a binary system. It's not only birth and death. There's birth and a billion permutations until death, right? And between light and dark, it's not either day or night. It's morning and a second after morning, a second after that, and billions of a second after that. There's unlimited. So actually, by saying duality, we mean multiplicity, and we're just giving two extremes for the sake of explanation, images. So her two sides are the world of duality, or multiplicity, and the extremes are showing unlimited changes and aspects of life, the different kalas. So Catur-bhujā, she has 4 arms. So I said Vishnu has 4 arms. Another famous Devi form is Lalita. She's usually seen in her most common dhyan mantras as having 4 arms, holding different things than Kālī does, or showing, I should say showing different things. They all hold the same things. Ma holds all these things, but they're showing different things. And that's interesting. That's actually the language. Sometimes it's used holding, sometimes it's used, she shows mudras or shows weapons, right? It's what she's revealing at the time. Can you close that? I'm getting a little cold. Thank you. We were going to do outside today, but I think it's good. The temperature went down quick. Yeah. Thank you. I have 10 minutes. So Daśa-bhujā, she also has 10 arms, right? And so there are forms of Ma with 10 arms. Actually, we have there is I'm thinking she has her own name. I like her form very much. It's our friend did a beautiful painting of it. You maybe have seen pictures of Kālī with 10 heads, right? 10 heads, like how do you show it? Like ding, 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 like that. And usually that will also have 10 arms, right? And so, of course, it's considered, of course, we're just maybe superimposing our conceptions on her revelation, that she's considered to be the joint manifestation of Dash Mahavidyas in the Tantra Shastra. Tantrics will describe her this way. So the 10-headed Kālī is the Daśa-bhujās in one form, right? These are her 10 heads, although they're not shown like this generally, right? And so the 10 arms, just that number 10 is a symbolic number. Of course, it has its own mathematical beauty. We won't go into that, but and some have interpreted, have explained to me that the reason 10, like also Durga has seen was during Mahishasura during Durga-priyā, we worship a 10-arm form of Durga, right? So by saying Kālī has 10 arms or 10 heads, as you say, with the 10 heads, she's seen to be connected to Daśa-bhujās. With 10 arms, we have in the library, kind of near as we enter the bookshop, there's a painting of Kālī with 10, or one-headed Kālī with 10 arms. And I remember somebody donated, left them on our free shelf, a couple copies or something, right? And we showed it to Haradanji, the priest from Dakshineshwar. And he got, this is very good, very rare, very rare. How is it rare? Because he says, actually, Kālī doesn't have 10 arms. Durga has 10 arms, right? It does not, in Bengal at least, Kālī is not worshipped with 10 arms in this form, right? The fact that she has it's 10-armed Kālī means actually it's showing that Durga's Kālī. He says it's a very rare picture, and he says you should keep it. So we cleaned it up and took it off the free shelf and put it up on the and hung it up on his suggestion. He said, don't let this picture go. It's not common. Now everything's common on Facebook. You right click, you can look anything up and save it. So I think I have a bunch of versions of it. But at that time, before Facebook, and you couldn't find these things easily, it was a rare picture. But so then the question. That's why. So if it's connected to Kālī or the Daśa-bhujās, as Daśa-bhujā, that's its own topic, and we've gone through many of the Daśa-bhujās as we've gone through the talks, and we'll continue as we get to there. But if it's connected to Durga, then we can look at the traditional understanding of why Durga has 10 arms. So that's how we can use that as a jumping off point. So some say that the 10 arms are connected to the 10 directions. That's an obvious thing, right? We reach in different directions, right? And many years ago, 30 years ago, actually, at the Yoga Center in Costa Mesa, right? They had their Durga-priyā. Durga-priyā was just a small picture of Durga. They did, on the shrine. They did, and the Guruji there, Ramakrishnanandaji, he said, you see, during the fall, this is a very simple interpretation, but still I've never forgotten. I mention it almost every year during Durga-priyā, during Navaratri talks. It's stuck in my mind. He says, during fall, we become complacent. We begin everything slows down, it gets cold, and you slow down, you stop waking up as early for meditation. It can easily, as nature slows down, we also slow down. We become a little bit lazy or complacent, right? And so we invoked Durga, right? And it was her 10 arms in 10 directions, and she removes, she protects us from the 10 directions, but she also awakens and destroys laziness and complacency. Wake up again for a spiritual life. So that's one interpretation about the directions. Right. Another one is about the senses. She controls the 10 senses. Right. Of course, we don't usually. How many senses do you have? How are you? Well, that's the problem. You're missing 5 senses. So these are dealing with. Okay, you have in Sankhya, you don't just have the senses. You also have the elements. Then you have the senses that interpret the 10 mantras, the sense objects, the sense perception, like that. So usually that's how the 10 are gotten, right? So she is expressing or manifesting through all perceptions and all directions. That's one way of looking at it, or connected to the Daśa-bhujās. Aṣṭā-daśa-bhujā. She also has tathā. Also, we mentioned tathā. It has to fix it in. It wasn't. It's put in. This word is put in to match the meter, but also it's like also she has. You can also put it into the sentence structure. She also 16 arms. So what are the 16 arms, right? 18 arms. 18 arms. 18 arms. That's what I meant to say each time. 18 arms. So just like a 10-arm form is connected by some as aspects of the Daśa-bhujās, right? Some will connect the 18-arm form of Ma with the Navadurgas, right? We have outside, we have an 18-arm form of Ma, above the Shiva Lingam by Hanumanji. We had that beautiful. And it was very nice. A year I was sitting right here giving class on Navaratri, on the Chandi, right? In the middle of this descriptions of the battle, and I forget, maybe there's a Dhyan mantra was Ma has 18 arms. I'm not sure if it was just there. It would be cool if it was there. It's been years and long, so I could probably say it. People would believe me now, but probably be a lie. I remember I keep adjusting the story in my head to get better and better. But anyways, in the middle of the thing, two men walked in carrying this very heavy marble image, right? And we're talking about Ma's manifestation holding all these weapons, and here she comes in, walks in, they put her down right there. Actually, even putting her down cracked the marble. We had to fix. It was cracked for years, only recently fixed. A broken piece of marble there. Right, and then she was in this corner for years, if you remember, and then finally we had a place for her, right, 18 arm. Right, so we like this form very much. And also there's a beautiful, my favorite painting of an 18-arm form of Durga there's a booklet on the Nava Durgas by Gīta-priyā, and the cover has an exquisite painting of 18-arm Durga. So so often, like for instance, the cover of a book on the Nava Durgas, you can see she's connected to the 9 forms of Durga, the Nava Durga form. That's one thing. Then we once again tried to give it a little bit. If we tried to give it some metaphorical yogic interpretation, it has been done by others. So they say, so this is, how do we get to 18? We have 5 elements: earth, fire, water, ether. We have 10 senses, the normal 5 and the other 5 that she doesn't have. And then manas, ahamkara, and buddhi, right? Mind, intelligence, and ego, right? These are 18. So these are considered in certain lists. We have, of course, we usually think, we have how many tattvas do we normally have? The 24 tattvas. There's different ways of listing, but this is a classical way of listing. Like in the Gita, it says, there's earth, fire, water, ether, and then mind, intellect, and ego. These are the 9, 3 gross and 5 gross and 3 subtle elements, right? So here it's a similar way of doing this. Is 5 elements, 10 senses, mind, ego, intelligence. This becomes 18, right? So if you got to give it, we love these type of things. We keep coming up with new. If I work at it, I probably can even make a few up. These I didn't make up, but you can come up with what 18 has some, because 18 is a fascinating number, So.
And nine's an important number.
9, of course, 9 is the goddess number, right? So 9 is the goddess number, right? And of course, the Sri Yantra is associated. It's 9 all over. It's based upon 9 triangles. Those 9 triangles go to create everything. Those 9 Shaktis, Shiva and Shakti principles go to create everything. And also 9 is a very mystical number on so many things. Of course, you have like our mala is 108 beads. What is that? If you know the simple principles of numerology, 108 is not 108. 108 is 9, because 1 plus 0 plus 8 becomes 9, right? So let's say we chant 108. So if we chant 108 mantras, it compresses into 9. If let's say this to 54 instead of half. 54 is 5 plus 4 becomes 9. If we do, let's put it into 27. That's 4. So 27 becomes 9. Let's do 2 malas. So we got 108 and 108 becomes 216. That becomes 9, right? So it's like no matter how you play around with it, it always becomes 9. It's a foundational. It's not. It's been all the 108 Upanishad, the 108 gopis, the 108 tattvas. The 108 chakras. We've whether everything's based upon these numbers that we attribute it to, or we just make sure every list of the Upanishads, there's different lists, all of them end up to be 108, because 108 is a mystical number, and there's a reason why it's a mystical number. So 9, it's because of 9. 9 is the Devi number. Even in Catholicism, we do, we have Vādya-ratā, we have novenas, right? And growing up, these are 9 nights after somebody dies or something, we chant the rosary. It's 9 nights to the goddess. The goddess's number is 9, right? Mary's number is 9 in Catholic rituals and prayer cycles. 9 holes in the body, like this, yes. Remembering, we have a tantric yogi friend named Shankaracharya, our Tennessee yogi, And years ago at Big Puja, he came up to Prakash. He says, "Oh, you're a very holy man, Prakash." He goes, "No, Swamiji, I'm not." He kept, you're trying to be the humble position, no, but I'm a worldly person. We are trying to get away from being like embarrassed publicly by a yogi. No, I know it. You're a holy man. He kept pushing it. Finally, he revealed, "You have 9 holes." With his 2 eyes, like the opens of the body. It was just a yogi joke. But it went over the entire. It went up several hours in the sandbox outside the Big Puja. I remember. It was very funny. And I think, Saranji, you mentioned you found the 18-armed form of Ma in the Chandi. Did you write me? I think we were discussing a while back. I was actually looking before. Maybe it wasn't you. I think it was you. I thought maybe it was years ago. Yeah. Right? It was something like we're trying to find where does this. When we found in the Chandi, the different most of the chapters of the Chandi, I think 16 of the 18 chapters start with a Dhyan sloka, right? Some mention a description of the goddess, right? And there's one where Kālī is described, almost like it's Kālī and Mahalakshmi. It's an unusual rupa, right? But she's described with having 18. The only time I've ever seen a description, and like we have an 18-armed form of Durga, but I've never seen a Dhyan sloka for that. And maybe it wasn't you. I think it was you, but it would have been like 5 or 6 years ago. It was a long time. Forgotten. I was looking at our Facebook messages. Maybe you sent it to me, but before trying to remember what's that verse. But there is such verses, Okay, I think we actually did pretty good. The verse: Gīta-priyā Vādya-ratā Preta-nṛtya-parāyaṇā Catur-bhujā Daśa-bhujā Aṣṭā-daśa-bhujā tathā. So I had actually written all my notes for the next group of names. I was thinking I'm a little mentally tired today. Came after a big puja and too much rice and paneer. So when that happens sometimes it's been like that where you sit down like, I have more, and pretty soon like you finish the verse and it's like 10 minutes into it like, I don't know. So I was a little scared that would happen. So I actually worked on my notes for the next verse, which we won't continue because we're actually just on time, I think. But actually, I'll just recite it so you get just for the sake of entertainment. Katya, it's a lot of beautiful names in it. Katyayini Jaganmata Jagatam Parameshwari Jaga Bandhu Jagadatri Jaga Anandakarini. It's very beautiful. I'm excited about these names. Well, anyways, excitement means we'll be. Think about it till next week. Are there any questions or comments? Because very rarely, we're actually 3 minutes early. Yes.
Well, no, I was just thinking about the word Gita, and no doubt it has multiple meanings.
Yes.
But I always, when I think of Gita, I think of texts like Bhagavad-gītā, Aṣṭā-daśa-bhujā, like almost like teachings.
Yes. Yeah, it could be Gīta-priyā, maybe that, right? But because it's connected to the next word, the next verse meaning. I mean, it means that for sure. I mean, it means anything. You can pull the word. The simple is Gīta-priyā. We can, the fact that I could speak 20 minutes on the word Gīta-priyā, and I'm just barely touching. So many things can be brought out of it, right? But it could be it's she who loves those texts, the study of those texts. But I think because it's the next verse is about music, instrumental music, and the next one is about dancing, right? But if we connect it, if the dancing is about like the dancing of the human body, the spirit within the body, maybe singing and music could also be aspects of that, right? Part of that dance and part of the joy and the focus of the dance of all of us, ghosts and goblins and corpses is moss. Maybe the ghost, maybe our words, our music, our expression, our emotion, our sentiments, everything, all the things that are Gita and music are also. She's the focus of everything. It's to please her, to attain her. Like that could be.
Even in Indian dance, it's to tell stories.
Yeah. But in Indian dancing has, of course, in refined classical Indian dancing, there's usually a very fine story being told, a devotional story being told, right? But fine Indian classical dancing is not the only type of Indian dancing, right? In the Mahishasura Madhuni Stotram, she who's surrounded by dancing mountain girls. Like they're not doing classical, they're not doing different mudras to tell stories of Krishna churning the butter and being upset with Krishna or something like that. You know, they're who knows what they're doing. You know, like it's a different. So it could, and also within even the classical dancers, also I know very very little about Indian dancing, so I'm speaking a little beyond my education. But we always, whenever there's a dance performance presented here, we've had so many in front of Ma. Ma loves dancing. There's no doubt about that. Saru, who brought her students the other day to dance, right? Many years ago she made she quoted a verse, right? I have to ask. I keep meaning to ask that verse again because it's stuck in my mind, but I don't remember the verse. And it said something like when you sing, Ma listens, something like that, right? When you sing like that, but when you dance, she dances with you, something like that. About the next level, it's like when these girls dancing, it's Ma's dancing there, not just listening. We sing. I don't know. She may, with her all 16 arms, do this. I don't know. She doesn't like her singing. I don't know. We always joke. We have like Chaitanya like that, and we start singing. He like, I don't know. I don't know how it works. Whether she likes all music necessarily, but when people dance, but it doesn't say when people dance for her. Like maybe just the dance itself is it's such. Oh, I was going to say, when there's a dance performance, there's usually, there's an opening thing to Ganesha, to the Guru Vandana, then there's some Leela being explained like that. But then there's usually part of it that's just an expressive dance. That's just for the beauty of the dance. It doesn't have a story part of it, right? It's usually, and it's meant to show the skill of the dancer, right? And the stamina. Usually they're hard and they're fast and they're long. Those, so it's not necessarily just to tell the story. Sometimes it's just for the beauty, the pure beauty of it. Sometimes, and so it's not just like of course, devotional music has its own charm, right? There's her name was, I can't remember. I was on one of these late night shows, maybe Colbert show or something. One of those late night a long time ago. There was a music guest. And it was I want to see something white, like Cecil White or something like that. She was a big black R&B singer from like the 50s. She's old but still can belt it out, right? And she sang a beautiful song, a couple songs. And then in the interview, she grew up in the church. She was a gospel singer, right? When she made her conversion, or when she went legit or mainstream, they started singing romantic music. It's a different category of music, right? That's how she made a career. And she said that her family rejected her, right? The church condemned her, right? Because this is devil's music, right? Before singing gospel, you think, I'm sure, like you hear, like Aretha Franklin was awesome, but you hear gospel music, that's like transcendental. It's on a whole nother level, right? But she didn't become famous as a gospel. She became as an R&B singer, right? So this person also same thing. But the line that stuck in my mind, right, which I think about all the time, and she says, that's the devil's music. And then she says, honey, the devil ain't got no music, right? It's like all music is divine. It may not be religious, it may not be devotion. There's different, it's not the same category. It may not be refined, it may be a little crude, like that, but it's not evil. It's all music is divine. That was her point, right? And so in the Daśa-bhujā tradition, we have Matangi. Where is she? Matangi is there somewhere. Towards the end, right? Matangi is Nila Saraswati, right? She's the other side, the dark Saraswati. Saraswati dresses in white. She holds the Vedas. She holds a classical veena and a crystal mala, not just a mala, a crystal. It's the purest mantra, the pure classical music, spiritual, scriptural revelation. It's like everything's refined, right? But what about like other types of music and other types of literature and other types of speech? Right? Is that evil? Right? It's not. Remember, the two extremes are just two. It's like she's also just as divine. She's Uchista Chandali. She's the mispronounced mantra, right? She not just pure chanda. She's the misspoken one. And we even do her worship without washing the mouth, right? We wash our mouth before chanting, but for her mantra, you're supposed to not wash your mouth. Right? It gets a little weird, but anyway. Right, or you don't shower first, right? Like you don't want, the reason is it's not meant to be that we should be unclean and have unrefined and have crude. We should, as yogis and we should train ourselves, refined thinking, refined taste, refined education. This is our goal. We worship Saraswati. But it's not. But she's not just one thing. She's everything, right? And so music. So even in Gīta-priyā, maybe it's all music, not just the Bhagavad Gita, right? Of course, Bhagavad Gita is one extreme, and Cannibal Corpses is the other extreme, right? But she may like Cannibal Corpses. Her next name is a bunch of dancing corpses, right? Maybe she likes that. You know, I don't like it, but maybe I do. Maybe that's why I'm rejecting against it from early childhood and taking classes. Anyway, thank you for your kind attention. Very good question. Hari Om Tat Sat. You can save that, and I can turn this one off.